In today's video, we're continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series. Today, we look at the 30th ranked team from the regular season, the Chicago Blackhawks. They're a team that's undergone substantial changes over the past 12 to 24 months. Will that continue? What other changes will we see? What contracts are expiring? What should we expect from them in the offseason? We'll discuss all of that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey, and welcome back to the offseason plan series. In case you're new to this series, here's a quick rundown of how these videos work. So essentially, I have these set up to review the 22-23 season quickly. We're going to take a look at how things went, take a look at the team record, some key team stats. We're going to analyze the cap situation, where they're at going into the offseason, just discuss how things went. Then we're going to look at internal business, so RFAs, UFAs, what contracts are expiring, who do they have to either re-sign or replace, and what are the top questions, top things that are really on top of their agenda facing the team and heading into the offseason. We'll discuss what I think at least we should expect from this team over the next few months. So let's first take a look at recap the 22-23 season. For Chicago, it's the 30th ranked team. They were pretty close actually from being the 32nd team, not that far off the mark between obviously the other teams. In Chicago was slightly, only barely ahead of Columbus and Anaheim. They had a record of 26-49-7 for 59 points. They were the lowest scoring team in the NHL, only scored 204 goals while allowing 301, which was 28th best, minus 97 team, plus minus, which is pretty bad overall. Their power play was not good, 16.4%. That's the 28th best success rate in the NHL. The PK, however, wasn't great, but it was certainly one of their better team stats, 76.2, which usually anything under 80% you don't really view as a great success, but he was 22nd in the league. Consider most other stats for 28 to 32. It's a little bit better, but still nothing to get too overly excited about. Of course, like I said, Chicago Blackhawks have gone through a lot of changes over the past year or two. We've seen a lot of changes to the first up and within the management group. Kyle Davidson is now in his second year. They've gone through a lot of changes last year at the draft, trading Kirby Dach, Alex DeBrincat, and then of course this year the trade deadline, trading longtime Blackhawks legend Patrick Kane, who will go down as one of the greatest Blackhawks of all time. Of course, he's now a New York Ranger. The trade of Max Domi, Jake McCabe, Sam Lafferty, all gone this year's deadline as well. And the team just recently announced as well that captain, longtime captain, and a really solid, big part of the team's last decade plus, Jonathan Toews, is not going to be re-signed. So Jonathan Toews will also be gone from the team, effective now, essentially. Well, from an on-ice perspective, he's done now. Obviously, his contract would expire on June 30th. So ultimately, that's a lot. That's a lot of significant change. The Kane and Toews era in Chicago has come to a close, curtains on that, and they move forward. They don't have really anything left from the glory days when they were a more competitive team, winning multiple Stanley Cups. Pretty much everybody from those days are moved on, even, like I said, not only on the ice, but off the ice as well. So they've been through substantial changes. Now, what will they do going into the offseason? They're certainly a team that's not expected to compete for a little while. GM Kyle Davidson has made it known that this is going to be a lengthy rebuild, likely looking at about 5 years before they feel like they can get back into a playoff spot. So they're looking at a pretty flexible salary cap space, of course, courtesy of CapFriendly.com. It indicates that for next year, they have 14 NHL contracts on their books, totaling only $42.5 million. So that's a lot of flexibility. That gives them almost $40.9 million available salary cap space. That's assuming that we get a $1 million increase and we have an $83.5 million annual salary cap with the NHL. Of course, Gary Bettman and the NHLP may discuss things and it may change a little bit differently, but that's what we're expecting as of today. So, ultimately they have tons of flexibility, but they have a lot of contracts to either re-sign or replace. So now let's look at their internal business. Who are the expiring deals? What are the RFAs and UFAs on the Blackhawks for the upcoming offseason here? So let's first start looking at the restricted free agents. And there's a few here that I think definitely expect to be back, but there's a few that may not be too. We've got Anders Bjork, Austin Wagner, Philip Kurashev, Caleb Jones, Ian Mitchell, and Joey Anderson. Now, I'm not sure if Anders Bjork's going to be back. They may not qualify him. He may become a UFA. He has struggled the past couple of years. Not sure he's going to have a whole lot more runway left in the NHL. Austin Wagner, I probably qualified. Philip Kurashev, I think they like him. I think they're happy with his progression. So Kurashev gets qualified. Caleb Jones gets qualified. Mitchell and Anderson are questionable as well. I think Mitchell likely will be qualified, but I'm not sure he has a future with the team. Joey Anderson's debatable too. Obviously, he was picked up in the trade with the Leafs that sent McCabe and Lafferty to Toronto. So Anderson actually spent time not only in Chicago, but in their AHL team as well. So I don't know if long term if he's an NHLer either, but at the end of the day, most of those guys will at least get a qualifying offer, but there's a few that are questionable for sure. On the UFA side, like I mentioned, longtime captain and one of the great players of all time, Jonathan Toews, is a UFA, but we now know for sure that he will not be re-signed, so he's not coming back. We know they also have Andreas Athanasiou. Athanasiou, I think, is debatable if he's back. I'm going to say probably not. It depends if Chicago is willing to give him some term. He's made it clear that he signed 3 consecutive one-year deals, and he wants some term and some job stability and security coming up. And if Chicago doesn't want to offer more than that, then he's got to look elsewhere. He put up 20 goals, 20 assists this year, so that's debatable. We're going to talk about him a little further later. We've also got Jujhar Khaira. He's a guy who's endured a lot of injuries. Andreas Englund, Alex Stalock, who's certainly rejuvenated his career. I think it's fair to say an older goalie coming back here for like I said, rejuvenation. And then Anton Khudobin, who was picked up from Dallas, but essentially was buried in the minors, and his contract's expiring. I don't think Anton Khudobin will be around the NHL any longer. So under the UFA list, I'm going to say that maybe Stalock resigns. I mean, him and Mrazek could be the goalie tandem next year. That's a possibility. I think Alex Stalock will definitely get an NHL contract somewhere for sure. The rest of them, no, it's debatable. I mean, I'm not sure that any of them are back. It's possible, but again, not a lot there that you have to bring back. Really, they have some flexibility. I think they're definitely going to be looking to do some other things. So let's now take a look at what I think are the top questions facing this team as we approach the full scale of the offseason. Well, first up, the biggest day for them is going to be the 2023 NHL Draft on opening day of the first round. They're definitely going to have a top 5 pick. They're a bottom 3 team in the league, which means that at worst they're going to pick number 5. But they certainly have decent odds of winning the lottery and picking first or second. So we could see that. And if them or the teams ahead of them are not the ones that are fortunate enough to win both lottery selections, they could get bumped down to 4th or 5th. But top 5 for sure. So, Connor Bedard's in there. You get Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlson, possibly Matt Michkov. I've said before in some of the mock drafts I've done, if the Hawks are picking at 4 or 5 and Michkov is on the board, I would not be surprised to see them pick him. They're a team that's not in a rush to be competitive tomorrow. They're going through a longer-term rebuild. He's a special talent. Yes, he's going to stay in Russia and play for a few years, but, he could be a really, really good player, even if they have to wait 2 or 3 years for him to come over. That might fit their timeline well. So we'll see. Either way, they're getting a really good player. So, and it's not just their first round pick that they have. They also have the first rounder for Tampa. So that's another draft pick that they can either grab another, potential prospect that they can see helping the team out, or they may consider a trade. But I'm not sure that they're a type of team right now that would be trading picks for good players that are going to come in and help right away. It's the opposite. If anything, they'd be the ones moving players, trying to get more picks. I think they're a ways away from doing something like that. So to me, they're probably going to use their pick. They're probably going to use Tampa's pick. Wouldn't even be shocked if they try to get a third one as well. They do have 4 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks. So whether they combine some of those to try to move up, or they do pull off another trade to try to get another pick maybe in the bottom half of the first round, that would not be shocking or surprising to say the least. Now, last year, though, they had more talent to move. Like I said, they got picks for DeBrincat and Doc. They went into the first round not having a whole lot, and they walked away with a lot based on the trades they made. But I don't know that they have the ability to pull that off this year. I mean, there are some players on this team that could be traded that might get a first-round pick, but they've been able to move most of the talented players that are going to generate any of those types of returns. But regardless of how they go about doing things, the draft's a pivotal day. They're going to get a big-time player for sure, and then they're going to have lots of the other mid-round picks to, like I said, either move up or grab some other prospects. They'll stock the cupboards in one way or another. As I mentioned, whether or not they sign Andreas Athanasiou, to me, is also a big question mark. He put up 20 goals and 20 assists this year. They signed a few guys like him and Max Domi. To me, they signed him for the sole purpose of flipping them at the deadline. They're like, we can get these guys as UFAs, so it costs us no assets. They can play for us for the year. Because we're a thinner team, they're going to get a bigger role, hopefully put up some good numbers, and there'll be players we can flip at the deadline to get some free assets, and it's a good strategy. And I fully suspect that whether or not it's Athanasiou or somebody else, they're likely going to take the same kind of approach. I mean, I would not be shocked if they go through the free agent market and they overpay a couple of veteran players, because if you look at the way the cap has gone with the minimal increase, it's that middle of the road player, because you got guys that would normally be, at league minimum. You got guys that are superstars making big money. It's that middle class group that are getting squeezed. So they're sometimes the ones that are, losing the most money, so to speak, based on the economics of the NHL today. Chicago is a team that could actually overpay to bring him in and flip them. And now, of course, you have to be willing to take short-term contracts. So we'll see. But whether or not they sign Athanasiou is another question. I wouldn't be shocked if they make him an offer. But like I said, I think he's had his best year in probably the last 3 or 4 years. So I think the odds of him getting a 2 or 3 year deal somewhere certainly increased a lot. And that wouldn't be surprising if he's able to get it. And if he can, he'll be gone. So we'll see. But if they don't sign Athanasiou, then they're certainly going to sign some players and trying to perform the same sort of thing. Now, why they couldn't trade him at the deadline, I'm not sure. I can't remember if maybe if he was unavailable, injured or something, but I know that with Domi, he get them a return. He was able to be moved, and they'll definitely do that again. Obviously, Ian Mitchell's another name to watch, as I mentioned, talking about his pending RFA. There's a lot of people that are concerned that he doesn't have a future with this team, and that getting a fresh start for him might be something that's important to the player and the franchise. So we'll have to wait and see how that works out. But Mitchell is a young defenseman still, who has been developing for a few years, and just at this point, because of the team being weaker and where it's at, if you can't get a full roster spot by now, then you have to wonder if they should try trading him to see if he can find that game somewhere else. Maybe some different coaching, different organization can help bring that on. But Mitchell's a name to watch for sure. Connor Murphy might generate some interest. I don't know if they're interested in trading him, but he's really, besides Seth Jones in that mega contract, one of the few, veteran players on the team that have any amount of term that might generate some interest, but I'm not really convinced that is. But Mrazek and Stalock very well could be their goaltending tandem. Now, if they don't re-sign Alex Stalock, obviously goaltending will once again become a question mark for them. They will have to enter the goalie market and see what they can find. It wouldn't be shocking, again, if they do like they did with Mrazek and take a contract of a goalie who might be struggling. Team might be, an unfavorable deal. Maybe they'll look back to the Leafs to take Matt Murray off their hands like they did with Mrazek. I'm not sure. That's a possibility, I guess. It depends on what they're willing to pony out, because they'll take a bad contract or two in order to get more assets with it as a sweetener. So they have lots and lots of cap space. So the Blackhawks, for sure, I think will be once again entering that market. Wouldn't be shocking at all if they enter the market of a broker trying to rent out some cap space to get extra assets too. Generally, that's only a shorter-term deal. You can only retain salary in so many files, so you can't do it too much. But the Blackhawks, I think, will be very similar strategy as last year. I don't think we're going to see much of a change in results going into next year. I suspect they're going to be still a bottom 5 team again, losing lots of games, still developing, working on their young players and their development longer term. So I don't know that this team is going to be competitive for some time based on the Kyle Davidson approach. It looks like it's going to be the long haul for sure. But they seem to be content doing this, and obviously the fan base seems to be about it as well based on their attendance and everything. It seems like the fans are supporting it. So we'll see what happens. So let me know your thoughts on the Chicago Blackhawks, the offseason moves that you think they should make, and what we'll expect from them here over the next few months. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Of course, stay tuned for plenty more to come in this series. We're just getting started with still 29 other teams to come. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.